Tyranny Busters. Tyranny Busters. Tyranny Busters.
I'm ready to get started, man. Let's do it.
All right, you're listening and watching Tyranny Busters.
Tyranny Busters.
Yes, sir. We're gonna bust the tyranny on your mind, and that tyranny is all the false programming. So we're gonna tear it apart. We're gonna bring you out of the matrix, or help you get out of the matrix, one point at a time.
Because we're all in it a little bit,
That's it.
right? We were born into this matrix.
Absolutely.
So the goal here is to free myself and try to bring as many people along with me.
And the matrix is rebuilding itself all the time, Mario. Every time you hear a lie, a half-truth, a piece of propaganda, the matrix is rebuilding itself around you. So it's a constant battle. So it's like the battle to survive. So
It almost feels like it's beyond. Like, has the matrix been here even before mankind? Is the question. Has it been working itself out? Do animals live in the matrix, I guess is what I'm trying to ask.
well, I guess it depends on. They might. How many lies they believe in and swallowed, and how much false propaganda they've been pushed on. But I don't know if we want to get too deep into animal psychology here, But to clear up a point here about the matrix and about the mind, every time you've been lied to, that's a building of the matrix on your mind. And if you're going through history, or you're listening to just one point of view and not hearing the other point of view, then you're going to come out on the other side believing something to be so, and it might not be so. And so a lot of times we don't know if we're doing something out of our own volition, or we're doing it out of some programming that we've had placed on us. And I use a good example. Do you put the seatbelt on because it's the law, or do you put the seatbelt on because it's the smart and proper thing to do? If you're going 15 miles an hour, you can't tell me the seatbelt's going to save you. But no, you get in the car and it's this automatic plug the seatbelt on, even if you're going to go down the block to your neighbor's house. So.
Isn't that how the matrix is really wired, is to build itself off of those things that we might naturally do? We might naturally just put the seatbelt on because of experiences we might have had previously in life. We might have gotten into car crashes. So we say, hey, it's just a good idea whenever I'm in the car to put my seatbelt on. Well, so here come the controllers, and say, hey, well, here's a perfect way for us to hijack the natural tendencies of your existence. We'll come in and just mandate that you do it. So now when I get in the car, I'm kind of confused. Am I putting on this seatbelt because I think it's the right thing to do, or am I putting on the seatbelt because of the policeman that's going to be, snooping in my car when I'm driving down the street?
Well, so you're at least taking a look at it. You're going like, am I doing this because the matrix is dictating it, or am I doing this out of my own free will, right, my own volition? And so that's a good thing, because you start to look at everything you do in life that way, and you can start tearing it down and really reestablish your self-determinism that way.
Well, that's what we're trying to do. To be self-determined is the definition of liberty.
Exactly.
Is that right?
Exactly.
And to appreciate and respect other people's own right to self-determination?
Well, I mean, that's part of it, because if you violate somebody else's right to self-determinism, then you're inclined to have your right violated at the same time. And so we start looking at things that way, and we look at that if we have inalienable rights, then our base right is our power to decide. That comes first. I mean, you get that, at the first sentient thought you have is about, and there's a decision happening there. You're observing and making a choice or a decision. And how you're going to react is just like an infant looking at, observing a mother or father or doctor or whatever, and there's an observation and then a free will decision comes in, whether you enjoyed what you saw or just didn't like what you saw, or whether you're confused about what you saw.
Well, and I told you I wanted to talk about two things on this show, and one of those things was the dependency problem that people have, and the what happens to a person when they start to just say, you know what, I don't want to make any decisions for myself. Life is going to be so much easier if I just allow other people to continually make the decisions for me. And some people would call that a dependent personality disorder. Right? And this is just kind of a synopsis or a definition of what a dependent personality disorder is. And I want to go into it too much, but I'm afraid that we might be suffering from this on a mass level inside of this country, maybe inside of this world. It says here that the personality disorder is a long-term condition in which people depend on others to meet their emotional and physical needs, while depending on themselves a minority of the time. Dependent individuals avoid situations that require them to accept responsibility for themselves, so they look to others to take the lead and provide continuous support.
But you didn't tell me you were Dr. Spock.
Well, I don't know too much about Dr. Spock to know if that's a compliment or not, but I like the term doctor.
How about I call you Sigmund?
Well, we're having some. I want to get psychoanalytical here because I feel like, we have these problems with the government. That's what our show has focused on a lot, about the tyranny that the government has, but how this is kind of just permeating itself within our personal lives too. The way that we relate to each other. Some folks might have a problem not being able to make a decision without getting their wife's approval.
Right. Well, I think you make a good point when you talk about dependency personality, a dependent personality.
I made a good point?
Yeah, you made a good
point. Oh, man, nice.
Yeah, I'm not going to give you a high five on that. But then there's the other side of that coin. So if you got some people that are like that, they have these dependent personalities. Then you got some folks that have a controller personality.
Right.
And I think this is kind of, people find a hard time disagreeing with any of this, that there are some folks with either one of those characteristics. And then when you get those two combinations together, it's probably a happy codependency going on, because the person who wants to be controlled and the person that likes to control, they're getting what they want. But then there's folks like us who really don't relish controlling other human beings, and we don't relish being controlled. And so we're caught up in this mix. And how do we deal with that? And when you get majority of the population say, we need to control people's habits, or I need a law from government to keep me from doing the wrong thing.
Right.
You get the majority doing that, then you're building, a tyranny against the rest of us who want to be self-determined.
We just want to be free.
Yep.
And we don't want other people to make those decisions for us, because, really, what are you getting out of life if other people are constantly making the decisions for you? How much satisfaction can you get out of anything that you achieve if it wasn't, your own determination that set you out to achieve these goals?
Well, I don't know what these people may get satisfaction because that's what they're inclined to. If that's their purpose or their goal, to have someone else control them, and they get that may be the definition of happiness for them.
Gotcha.
But I think it's guys like you and I, when we get caught up into this mix, it's like then we're sort of like, okay, the other two sections or factions are getting what they want, but we're not getting what we want because these other two factions are setting up all these controlling laws, rules, regulations, and violating us.
Right.
So we're not sitting there saying, beat me, master, control me, master.
Right.
And we're not saying there, give me the whip, I want to do the beating.
Right.
We're saying, leave me alone, I just want to live my life and engage in free will association with other folks. And so I guess we'll have to decide, what kind of society are we going to have? Are we going to have a government that's controlling all kinds of things, satisfying the controllers and satisfying those that want to be controlled. And if we're not going to go along with that, how do we, the free will independent people, fight back?
Well, I think that would lead us into the bigger issue here on our show, which is why we institute governments, right? If we free will people that want to live upon our own self-determination, and we identify that we do have an inalienable right to life, liberty, and we feel like we're being persecuted, or somebody's trying to take that away from us, and we can't do it on our own. We can't fight them off on our own. Well, then we get together with like-minded people and we create a force to fight off these demons, to fight off these vampires.
Well, and actually, when you hear often about a small percentage of people being able to change things, I was discussing with you earlier in the week where if we had 3% of a 300 million population, 9 million people, who just said, you know what, we're not going to comply with this tyrannical law. And I've often thought about people such as those people that enjoy marijuana to just get together and say, look, we're going to smoke marijuana, and you controllers, or you people that want us to be controlled, well, too bad, and just clog the courts and fight back that way. They'd have to shut down because there's no way that they could sustain the costs for that number of people who they want to control and lock up. So they just can't lock up that many people. They can't control that many people. So the controllers would lose, and it's pretty much that simple. But it's also pretty complicated in that.
Well, yeah, if everybody's stoned,
no way.
How are they going to get together and do this?
Yeah.
So that's a problem there, man.
Yeah, they can't get out to go to the meeting, They just want to eat some chips and sodas and such,
And I don't want to diss any of the stoner population because they have in some parts of the world, some parts of the country actually focused on this issue and have had success in
I
right.
thought you were going to say you resembled that remark.
Well, hey, it's not on Tuesday, man.
Oh.
We got business to attend to here.
Taking care of business, get serious here, but yeah, no, there's a lot of truth to that. It's just getting and organizing and saying no more. And how about this tyranny, the income tax tyranny, where, what is it, about 57% of what you produce is confiscated by government when it's all said and done. And then how quickly could we shut that down, or even shut down the bankster gangsters that we complain about?
Well, it's going to have to be the people that are being affected by the usurpation of their resources by the government. Because like we were saying here, we got there's a whole group of people, like you're saying, the controllers. They love the dependency. They want to increase the dependency because this makes them relevant. This makes them feel powerful. And I don't know, maybe some of it's not always, consciously done on their part, but when you're enacting bills to raise taxes on people, knowing that's going to take their own ability to be self-determined away from them and then given to the power of the government, it has to be conscious on their part in some way, saying, well, we're taking from you and then we're going to give it back to you.
Well, yeah, but in a lot of cases, this controller personality is not aware. The controller themselves are not aware that they have that personality, and they only want they'll vote for somebody that's promising them some security, and really what they're doing is they're trying to control a situation or control something bad from happening, and that springs from fear. And so they slip into a mode of being a controller. People can slip in and out of that mode. They don't have to be, 1,000%. It's like sometimes, actually, and then when we're engaged in relationships, communication even, sometimes we're controlling the conversation. The only problem
I
is,
generally tend to do that.
yeah, well, with who? That
I
was,
own in this conversation, man. This is my conversation.
oh,
You can partake in it if you want, though. Yeah, so I see what you're saying. I might have my own little controller
issues.
tendency.
Yeah.
I don't got an issue, but it's it's there. It's a little spice, a little
Hey,
controller.
just stop controlling everything, Mario.
Well, it's I'm gonna have to start to control more of my life. You know.
Well, what's this have to stuff?
Well, if I don't, then I am going to continue to live my life in servitude. I'm going to continue to live my life unable to be self-determined. If I don't stand up and break these shackles off of me.
All right, so tell me, maybe give me an example of someplace where you're not being self-determined.
Well, some place that I'm not being self-determined. I mean, a perfect example there is the income tax. My resources are taken from me and then given to other people to be used for their own wants. So that's a perfect one. But also, my self-determinism was violated just the other day when I was walking down the street and a police officer decided that, hey, he thought that I looked a little funny, so he came over here and he stopped me, and he wanted to frisk me, and he wanted to tell me, he gave me some bullcrap story about I had walked on a red hand. The light wasn't red, but the hand was there, and so I hadn't actually jaywalked, but I had committed just enough crime for him to legally be able to stop me and frisk me and basically usurp my determination to go to the restaurant in which I was headed for.
Some folks will just say that's just a minor, inconvenience. Why do you let that get to you like that?
Well, there was two parts to that, right? The one part, it was almost exhilarating to stop, for the police officer to stop and talk to me and to kind of question me on how well I knew my rights, on how well I was ready to exercise my right of self-determinism. But when it came down to it, and I was a little ignorant, I had to do a lot of research onto this because, after the 20 minutes of being harassed, the officer says, okay, well, you're not going to let me search you for drugs. We've established that. What I do now have the right to do as a police officer is search you for a weapon. And I submitted, and the cop, she put her hands on me, and it was.
Does your wife know about that?
She does. It was a sad point in my life, and so that's a violation. Somebody coming up and groping you, somebody coming up and touching you. Why shouldn't I be pissed off about that?
Well, I agree with you. I'd be probably more pissed. But lots of folks who just kind of, go with the flow, say it's no big deal. And I don't know if our job is to try to convince those people it's a big deal. I think maybe our job is to see how people like you and I can do something about this and stop it from happening to us. Even we don't need 90% of the people to agree, because you probably get 90% of the people to be sheeple. So how do we stop this? And you actually did something. You resisted the tyranny, and if you went the other way and just went with the flow, let them do whatever they wanted, then the experience might have been less painful to you. But for the overall battle of liberty, we would have been going down the road of less liberty and more tyranny by not resisting this tyranny. So I don't really care to say, to all those people over there that say, hey, no big deal, and da-da-da-da, and don't even want to argue with them. But how do we stop this? Some people came into my office wearing these little white uniforms, and they were volunteer fire department people. And they walk in, don't even introduce themselves, don't say, excuse me, sir, whatever. And we're from the fire department. We're come here to check to inspect your place. And, and they go, where's your business license? And I'm going, I kind of went, it's over there. And then the extinguisher, and they looked at the extinguisher, and they're walking around talking like, blah, 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 with each other. And one of them plops herself down right next to me in my desk without saying anything, asking for anything. And she said, I'm going to ask you some questions. I said, no, you don't. In fact, get out of here. I don't want you in my office anymore. You're rude, inconsiderate. How come you won't answer the questions? And I'm going, later on, the next couple of days later, the assistant fire chief or something comes over. He's got a whole different demeanor, and he's explaining things and whatnot. I said, you guys, you don't get, you come into my office here and you start demanding things like you own this place. He says, yeah, you're right. He says, you don't have to answer those questions. I said, yeah, I know I don't have to answer those questions. And it's like, they got to check my business license. They're the fire department to see if it's up to fire standards. Business license, well, they say they're doing it for the city. The city knows if I paid the darn business license or not. So they're going to come and check to see if you paid your business license when the city already knows that, but one branch is not telling the other thing. And I just get mad at the whole process. We got volunteers that go around to hassle us, and I'm thinking the fire department ought to have volunteers that go out and put out fires, helping people, not volunteers to go out and harass the people on paperwork and stuff like that. And so that infuriates me, but I guess I've felt the sting of these tyrants who think that they are the masters and I'm the servant. And if you're an independent personality where you want to be self-determined, you reach a point where you say, that's it, no mas.
Well, I agree. I know we're sorry we're having a little bit of problems here. I think we're back on. We're having a little bit of issues.
If you're in the chat over there, let us know if we're on or not.
Our sound is good though.
Well, it sounds good, but does that mean it's going anywhere?
We're online now. All right.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Well, let's keep on going. Well, that you were saying, right? You were saying that there comes a point, right, when it just it doesn't work anymore, and this is something that gets talked about here in the Declaration of Independence, right? And they're talking about the issues of throwing off the tyrants. And okay, here it goes. I'll just read a little something here. Well, why do we have this government? To secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence, indeed, will dictate the governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly all experience has shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards to their future security.
Yeah, I'd like to make a point there. The absolute despotism is not here yet, but it's close, and that's the thing. You gotta.
Man, it's hard to say. I mean, I think for some folks it has.
Well, for some, but I'm talking about, just let's say a collapse of the whole system and martial law, and
right.
You got 10 o'clock curfews for everybody, and you got troops roaming the streets and food lines and all of that to show up. But the thing that you kind of missed in your reading there is the earlier underlying point. Jefferson put out the idea that that we have inalienable rights,
Mm-hmm.
and that these rights are to be secured by government. That's the whole purpose of government, is to secure our inalienable right. And if we have an inalienable right to life and liberty, well, it's just like the Second Amendment being that Congress shall not infringe. And how many gun laws are there? 20,000, and they're all infringements.
Right.
So if you have a right to life and liberty, you have a right to that without arbitrary infringement. And the only infringement you should have on that is that the equal rights of other people. You don't have a right to violate anybody else. And of course, according to Bastiat in the law, when the purpose of the law is to deal with situations where people have violated other people,
Right.
So the underlying principle there, and what they're talking about in the Declaration of Independence, or Jefferson was talking about there, is governments are instituted to secure our inalienable rights. And again, I refer to the book The Law by Bastiat, that because life and liberty and property exist prior to government, prior to laws, laws are created for the purpose of securing those things, not violating those things.
Well, and we wouldn't even need a system to we wouldn't even need this government. We wouldn't have to institute the government if there was not something that was trying to take these rights away from us. If we were living in some utopia world, right, where nobody ever tried to violate your rights, we wouldn't even have to worry about it. We wouldn't have to institute the government to secure our rights. But the situation at hand is that, and the situation at hand for the folks who started this country, is that there was a serious usurpation of their rights. They were trying to cut these. They were trying to come after these people, tax them, and eat out their substance. And so they had to buckle down. They had to stand up and say, "No, you're not going to do this to us."
Well, and the whole idea of government too is we know that people will try to violate other people if they can get away with it, and that's speaking of it, I'll say in a domestic area, that you have government to deal with that, because with a vacuum, we're not talking the anarchist argument here. We're talking a very limited government that the founders envisioned just to deal with, say, violations. And even the purpose of having a military was to repel invasions. And certainly, there was an agreement that the military had to be strong enough to repel any invasion, and we certainly should have that today. But we don't have that kind of a military. We have a military now that goes around and violates the sovereignty of other nations under the pretext that maybe these guys are going to do something bad to us. And if we apply that same practice, that's why we got domestically, that's why we got so many laws that say, oh, you got to do this because this might happen. We have to stop this from happening. You got a DMV code that's that thick, and really all it has to be is you need to drive in a safe and prudent manner. But in the DMV code now, you got the things about seatbelt. I mean, you got all these different laws, rules, regulations that are in the DMV code, and if you and then they got the exceptions for, like, the seatbelt exception. I think I told you when we were out delivering campaign material that there's a seatbelt exception for newspaper delivery, or so you don't have to wear the seatbelt. And so they write in all this nonsense. But
Right.
The thing is, and then the excuse for the controllers is, if you don't wear your seatbelt, then we have to pay for it through medical care costs, and then that's all part of the same trap, because forcing people to pay for other people's medical care is the reason that medical care costs are astronomical right now. I mean, that's a short version.
And that's where we're at right now. All right, we live in this socialized society where we're all forced to pay for each other, and so we're forced to take the brunt of each other's bad decisions. And how, until that stops, it seems like we're in a web. This web is spun around us, and how do we snip out that web?
Now you come back to the same question. The same question is, how do you get that 3% to bring down the tyranny? And the same 3% that have enough courage to resist, say, the tyrannical drug laws, to resist the tyrannical usurpation of the fruits of your labor, confiscating 50% of it, really, when you add up all the taxes, 57%. How do you, stop the train wreck that's going to happen financially and economically when basically we're forced into taking the Federal Reserve notes as our only lawful legal tender, but we're not really forced into that. The same problem exists as you don't have people that stand up and say, hey, that's it, I'm not taking it anymore. I wanted to get elected to Congress, and one of the things I wanted to do was stand in the TSA line and tell all the folks there about how an abomination this was, and get arrested and be on the news. Now, I could go down there and do it as just Joe Citizen, but I'd be arrested and thrown away, and we don't get anywhere.
Right.
When Martin Luther King did something, he was already a national spokesman. He got somewhere, or Gandhi or whatever. But somebody that has a position that media is going to pay attention to needs to kind of lead the charge here, and other folks to resist anyways a little bit, just some sort of resistance.
Well, that's what really pisses me off about all the celebrities of today. You got these people who have the spotlight on them. They have so much power in this sense that they could resist the TSA. We got these, you listen to so much of the music today, and they're glamorizing the drug use, which is illegal, but none of them will actually challenge the system and go use some drugs in plain sight of an officer. So it really it pisses me off, because a lot of them are adults who are making this type of these celebrities, and it seems like they don't have any of this spirit in them to make the world a better place for the young people who are coming up into the world. And I'm getting a little bit older, and it seems like that's kind of where my position is right now. I feel like I've had a lot of fun in my life. I've been able to experience a lot of cool things, and I want to make sure, I want the world to be there and accessible to the people who are also going to be growing up and have the same type of opportunities. And so, we don't have to be politicians necessarily, but you do have to have the spotlight on you. So, they'll come out and support Obama. They'll make videos to be political in that sense, but they won't do anything to actually challenge a system that is taking away our liberties all the time.
Well, I disagree with you a little bit that they do what they do to make the world a better place, but what they're not doing is stopping the government and the tyranny. Like you said, they're in a position where they got a ton of money,
right?
And where they could make some real serious waves and stop the tyranny coming from government, stop the abuse coming from government, from the controllers and those people who want to be controlled. Yeah, they make the world a better place if they're entertainers and make a good movie or any of that. That's making the world a better place. But we don't want government to make the world a better place, because it doesn't. It makes the world a worse place. We want government to deal with cancers in society that make the world a worse place when they do some harm. And government's sort of like, in my mind, the immune system to the body. When there's disease or infections or whatnot, government's to take those away and take it out of the body. But government's purpose is not to try to nourish the body. It has a negative role like the immune system does. So if we get that right, then
that's deep.
Yeah,
that is deep, man, because that is really the function, right? Something bad comes in, you get it.
That's it.
And then you just go back to just being the immune system.
Just like swatting that fly, and taking the bad stuff away. So, but if you got government that is going to do good, it's sort of like a stick. If you have a stick, and one side is the do good portion, and the other side is the do harm portion. Well, if you take that stick, government's using that do good portion, it's hitting someone else with the do harm portion of the stick. Okay? But if you turn the stick around and do harm to somebody who's harmed somebody else, then it's doing good to the person that was harmed and the rest of us. So government's got this stick. It can do good or can do bad. I want it to do bad against those who've done bad. And that's the vision that the founders had for a small, limited government.
Well, and this limited government, one of the other things that really came to me over this weekend here was the drive and the want that the people who started this country, they wanted to be involved in that process. And this seems to be a huge thing that was really getting them pissed off, was that their government was in a far off place and they couldn't have any type of representation, they couldn't have any type of input into the government, and so that therefore was taking away their self-determination. But if we're allowed to have input inside the government, I mean, that's really the only way to have a sound government, right? Is if everybody has an opportunity to be a part of it.
Well, I don't know if you, not really. I don't think so. I think if you do what Bastiat said in the law, is that you could just, if the government did what it was charged to do, and that was to protect everybody's rights,
right,
then you don't need a small handful of people or small-sized government to do that, and a small number of people voting. If that's all they could vote on, they were limited. They were really bound by the Constitution, is to vote on what they had power to vote on. They didn't cross that line. Then the rest of us really don't have to be involved in it.
But doesn't he also discuss in there the suffrage and how, if the government wasn't ever really able to, go against our rights, if all they were, that it wouldn't matter if young kids were voting, or if everybody could then vote. I see, we can have.
He said it wouldn't matter if everybody voted, and it wouldn't matter if only a small handful voted.
Right.
It'd be the same scenario.
But if it's excluding people from it, then how can the government, if the government's excluding people from taking part in it, then how can it properly address the securing of those individuals' rights if they don't have any input? If they can't say, hey, I'm being done bad by this person here or this group of people, how then can they address those issues?
Well, it's basically a hard iron core understanding of what government's purpose is. And if the government's purpose is to secure everybody's rights on an equal footing, then, if you've got a dispute even with the richest guy on the planet, you should have a jury of, your peers, and it's not going to be perfect. Sometimes the guy who's got more money, he's going to win, and the guy who's got less money is going to lose. But we want government to be there as the arbiter of disputes, to hold a forum for us to settle our disputes. But, when you say everybody doesn't need to participate in a system that is based in nobody plunders anybody. But when it gets to a system where everybody's plundering everybody, then you can argue we want universal suffrage because everybody wants to get in and get a share of the plunder.
Yeah, no, I see what you're saying. But this was a real concern of the people that founded this country.
What was?
That they did not have the same. They didn't have the right to partake inside of the government that was dictating them how to live.
Yeah. On a federal level, if you will, because Great Britain was the federal government at that time, and so they didn't like the taxation and no representation to Parliament, if you will. So that was a big issue. But locally, and early on, Great Britain didn't infringe too much, and they were kind of self-governing within the colonies. But as time went on, things got to conflicts start to build and whatnot.
Right.
But I'm sure their complaint was that they didn't have a say and they were being taxed without a say. Today, we got such a mix out there. Even the guys that are taxed so heavily, their matrix built around them, they think that they got more benefit, way more benefit than the actual taxation burden. And so, because the way it's distributed, and even the rich folks, that everybody complains they pay either too much taxes or not enough taxes. For the most part, they pass the cost of those taxes on to us in the products that we buy, and so we're paying the tax there, and we don't even know it. So we don't know how heavy the burden is, because modern technology has made our life much easier than it was 100 years ago. So there's a lot of confusion in all of this, and there's a confusion as to actually how much tyranny we're facing, because if we grew up in it, we just think that's the way it is. If we grew up and we're stuck with government schools, then, and whatever they're teaching in government schools, then people will complain about the tyranny. Well, they won't let us pray in school, and they teach in homosexuality as this, that, and the other thing. And so what the real tyranny is that they take so much of the fruits of your labor is that you don't have enough left over to send your kids to private school.
No, that is the tyranny. That is the problem here, And I don't even have a kid, and I'm being forced to pay for this education. And this really the National Education Association. Why am I paying? Why am I paying for this? I don't even have a child. Why should I have to work throughout the day in order to pay for these people to send their kids to school? It's totally bogus. I'm not getting anything out of this, and yet I'm looked at as, oh, you got no heart, Mario. You don't want kids to go to school. Of course I want kids to go to school. I just want their parents to be the ones to pay for them to go to school. I need to be able to save my money so that when I do have a child, I have enough there to send them to the school, or to send them to the teacher of my own choice.
Wow, man, that's a novel idea. So, but anyway, everybody can complain. So let's talk about, how do you fix this? How does the 3% get up and say, hey, the 3%?
We stop filing taxes.
Wow.
That's what we do. We stop. If somebody's going to hire you and they're going to demand that you fill out this paperwork, you say, you know what, I'll find a job elsewhere.
Well, I would encourage people that go out and work, work for themselves, and get paid in whatever people want to give to you in exchange for your labor. And I certainly encourage people to understand and study the tax laws. I got a book, Tyranny Busters, so that they really understand that whether or not they got something taxable income. And if they find out that they can live their life without having taxable income, then that's the way to do it. And that stop feeding the beast. And there's some easy ways to do that. And for other folks that really want to resist it, there's another way. We can bring the monster down too, is just drain its coffers by first not feeding it, and secondly, find out a way to pull the plug and drain its coffers too, and resist the tyranny, just like the people with the drug laws and all of this. Or you can understand the Fully Informed Jury Association, and how you get on a jury and you can say not guilty to somebody who's being prosecuted for a non-crime, and really the system is guilty, and the controllers and the people who want to trade liberty for security. And this whole war on drugs, there's two factions there: the controllers, the people that make a huge amount of profit through the drug war, or it's like the military-industrial complex, the drug-industrial complex, and those people who think they're going to be more safe and secure.
Oh yeah, because they're gonna smoke some weed, and they're gonna crawl through my window, and they're gonna steal everything from me. They're gonna corrupt my children.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the hypocrisy, though, of the dialogue that we see going on today, right?
Well,
you listen to these conservative people, man, and they want to ban trans fats. These damn socialists, or they want to stop us from having sodas. These damn tyrants, But hey. We got to stop people from smoking weed, or we got to stop people from doing cocaine, and it's like they're unwilling, because I don't think they're unable. I just think they're unwilling, because probably many of them are benefiting from these industrial complexes that you speak about. They don't even want to go there. But you listen to them, The hypocrisy is so disgusting inside of the dialogue.
Well, yeah, and you see on those issues, they're controllers and they're looking for security, and then on the issues that affect them, they're complaining about the tyranny, and they can explain to you why it's bad and it's tyranny. But then, how do you get these people to comprehend that they're losing their freedom because they're also denying other people their freedom? And I had some people discussing this Arizona Supreme Court striking down things in the Arizona law, and I just listed 10 or so other huge violations of their rights, and things like the NDA, National Defense Authorization Act, and a bunch of others, and their war on drugs, how they violated other people. And I said, well, so what's your complaint over here? And you're getting 50% of what you earned confiscated from you, and the Federal Reserve is destroying the value of what you got left, and you got a complaint of what they're doing over there. So misguided, and they'll argue about that and get all wrapped up into that while they're living on this slave plantation.
Well, I think it goes back to, the all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer, while evils are sufferable, than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. Now, this is the problem here, Mike, is that we are accustomed to these evils, and I know that I do want people to complain, and I do want people to gripe, because I feel like that's the infant stage, and I'm at that infant stage, I'll tell you right now, but that's the infant stage of starting to become strong. You start to hear your voice, and but it has to be your voice, has to be your opinion. It can't just be this talk show host that you listen to that's going to tell you why this thing is wrong. But it's not a principle that's wrong here, and that's I think only when we're really going to be able to buck the system off of us is when we start to identify the principles that are wrong with these particular issues, like the National Defense Authorization Act is just damn ridiculous, man. We're gonna throw you in jail without a trial by jury, right? And indefinitely detain you. So they put that out there. Does it have to be actually exercised before we believe that this is something that the government's gonna do?
Oh no, and that they throw it out there and they pick off one here and there and here and there. I mean, how many of us have heard the story about Nazi Germany? They came after the Jews. I wasn't Jewish, and the Catholics, homosexuals, and all of that.
And then when they came after me, there was nobody left.
Nobody left. So it's the same scenario there. But when we're getting involved in politics and we're looking at any issue and we're discussing any candidate, we should be looking at it like, is this issue a cry for more security, or is this something that's going to give us more liberty? And the same thing with candidates. You're looking at some candidate that's going to ride on the white horse and save you and bring security. And again, it's a total different thing than a guy like Ron Paul. He might have been riding on a white horse with a white hat, but his message was, I'm here to restore liberty. I'm not here to give you any security. And so the message is vital when we're looking at candidates. And if I'm going to fix the city, I'm going to bring more jobs, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to fix health care. And they're not talking liberty, they're talking some promise of security. And the root of our problem is that we've given up our liberty for security. When you give up your liberty, you give up your self-determinism. Whether you look at the Social Security, the Medicare, Obama's health care tyranny bill, or it's a war on drugs, or even the war against terror. This is all give up your liberty and we'll give you security. But guess what? We don't get the security. And this war on terror, the way it's run, we get, we're more prone to terrorist attacks because of what we're doing in that process. But that's just part of the process of giving up liberty for security. So ask yourself, if you think you're going to get out of this, ask yourself, what side do I come on down on this issue or this candidate? Is this a candidate that's for liberty or promising security? And if you can't find a candidate that's promising liberty, that's working to increase your liberty, then you don't have to vote for anybody. Why vote for a new tyrant that just wants to be a controller and rule us? We need to scream for liberty.
Well, and this brings us to the point here, right? The way that the politics are set up right now is that we got this left and this right. Neither of them are trying to give us to secure our liberty, right? So if we don't vote, well, and then we don't do anything, we already know that it's going to be a more clamped in on our security. So if we do choose not to vote out of a conscious decision that it's not going to give us our liberty, then we have to find other avenues into which address that situation and to make our voice heard and to get some of that spotlight. Or else we're just going to... it's a total fraud right now, man. You got the right and the left. There's no difference. But it's promoted as a difference, right? You think you have a choice here. But your choices are really going to give you the same exact outcome. It's like you think, I'm going to go left and I'll end up at point A, or I'm going to turn right, I'll end up at point B. But either which way you go, you end up at point tyranny.
Well, yeah, and then you know what? If you don't vote for somebody because you can't find somebody that's an anti-tyranny candidate, then you're right. You got to do something, and there's lots of things you can do. You can resist the man by we'll go around and teach your fellows how to fight against the tyranny in the jury box. That's a fully informed jury association. You get a hold of me, I can get you flyers, pamphlets, whatever. You pass that information around. There's a book, I've ordered 20 copies of it. It's called Adventures in Legal Land, and this tells you how to fight in traffic court more than anything else. And so just don't, especially if people's budgets are getting tight anyways, they're going to fight back. But don't just belly up to the bar and say, I'll pay the fine. Fight these guys. And, there's ways you can, it takes some effort. It may take more effort of your time than your money, but eventually you won't have any time or money, because you didn't resist them and fight. And a greater number of people fighting back, you bring the tyranny down. It's just really that simple. But we are welfare kings and queens when it comes to our liberty. If we were that bad when it came to, say, going out and get the necessities of survival, we'd already be dead. But we are that bad when it comes to thinking that we got to pay a price for our liberty. And what is that price? Because you just think that we know what the price is to live, for food and clothing and shelter and all of that, or for happiness. Mm-hmm. But for liberty, it just seems to people, how do you pay a price for that? The only way you fight. You resist tyranny. Yeah. That's how you pay the price.
And this tyranny has been against us for who knows how long. That there has been a group of people that have, decided that it is in their best interest to gang up and plunder everybody. And it's not going to stop. It's just because, like you said, there's this fatal trait inside of, I don't want to say every human being, but inside a vast majority, to live off the fruits of other people's labor, to have their work done by the brow of other people, by the sweat of other people's brows. And it's always going to be here. And so this is why we institute these organizations, this government. Because we come to, because, me and Mike I said, hey, Mike, you know what, man? These guys are trying to come, there's these two guys, and they're going to be able to take me out, no problem. They're going to be able to take you out, no problem. But if we gang up with each other, and we're both about liberty here, we can fight them off, and we can have, our life, and we can be in charge of our own pursuit of happiness. And this is what we have to do, and we got to come together, and we got to party, and we got to have fun with it.
Yeah, well, you're just talking like the bully. You gotta resist the bully, or he's gonna keep bullying you, and that's basically the message there. So, and we can make. You're right. We should make fun of this, and trying to ask a political party to save it for us, or even a candidate. He's going to do it all on his own or whatnot, and a small number of people, and the tyrants that control the media and control the whole game are going to just melt away. It's not going to happen. It's only when we get a rising tide of people who will resist the tyranny. And like I said, 3% is 9 million people in this country. If 9 million people said that's it to anything,
Jeez.
then that's it. That'd be the end of it. And when you talk about consent of the governed and the idea of trial by jury, that meant unanimous consent. Consent of the government, that meant unanimous consent. That we would get unanimous consent that if somebody violates somebody else, then there should be restitution made.
Mm-hmm.
We'd get unanimous consent that if somebody rapes somebody, then that person that did the raping should be punished appropriately and stiffly and whatnot. You get unanimous consent where all of the laws that are designed to protect our rights, our inalienable rights, you're going to get unanimous consent. You're not going to get unanimous consent when it's like, 55% of the people want free health care and the other 45% have to pay for it all. You're not going to get unanimous consent there.
No.
And so that's the idea of consent of the governed, a unanimous consent, rules and regs that people will unanimously consent to. And a gasoline tax. They unanimously consent. They're not going to have a tax revolution if the gasoline tax is just there to pay the roads. They're going to pay, according to the roads that they use, the gasoline tax that's appropriate for that. Even an old shut-in person who buys a loaf of bread will have part of the cost of the loaf of bread is going to be the cost to transport the bread to that person. So you'll get unanimous consent and something like that, and if they don't consent, they're getting restitution because they're getting the service for the product. They might say, I don't consent to that, I don't want no taxes. Well, you're still going to get unanimous consent in a situation where they get restitution if they were wronged, something back for it. But if you're getting something nebulous, esoteric, nebulous, that you're not really getting something, but, I'm getting a better society. No. If somebody's pulled out of the society for harming society, yeah, you're getting a better society, but not this. If we only had free health care, it would be a better society. There's plenty of arguments that show that that's not the case, and you violate somebody to do it, and that's not unanimous consent. They can argue that their way's better, but I want to argue, how can we, who believe in our way, stop the tyranny of the majority?
Well, that's what we're doing here at Tyranny Busters. We're trying to come up with some ideas here. But just to touch on that thing here, man, back to the dependent personality disorder, right? Individuals with this see themselves as inadequate and helpless. They believe they are in a cold and dangerous world and unable to cope on their own. They define themselves as inept and abdicate self-responsibility. They turn their fate over to others. These individuals will decline to be ambitious and believe that they lack abilities, virtues, and attractiveness. Well, I know I'm one attractive dude, so I'm not really concerned about falling into this category here. And I'm pretty virtuous, and I know that my abilities are strong.
Mario, this is Tyranny Busters, not Tyranny Builders.
Maybe that's here though. Maybe we have to be a little more optimistic that these things can happen. I think that's one of the when you say unanimous consent, what's unfortunate is that so many people have been non-participative in the government process that they have been able to get unanimous consent, but the only people voting are a bunch of controllers. And so we have to inject ourselves into that process in order to create non-unanimous consent in when it comes to taking away our liberties. And there has to be a voice, and it has to be loud, it has to be recognized. And I think if we build up this optimism and we say, yeah, well, it's not just a cold world, it's also a loving world. It's a beautiful world that we live in. That we might, start to be a little bit more apt to making it even more beautiful, or to, expounding that feeling and making that prevalent. And that could shake people out of this idea that, oh man, everything is so jacked up. I don't want to. I'd rather just numb myself to the whole entire world and just live in my own little cave and just let everybody else make the decisions for me.
Well, yeah, and then you touched on something when you said something there. It keyed something in my mind about you got to be responsible for your liberty. The dependent personality is not responsible. Someone else is. So, and the controller, he's responsible because he's controlling the situation. But if we let the controllers control us, then we're certainly not being responsible. We're just as bad as the dependent personality. So, when you see the tyranny, you feel the tyranny coming, then you look at it and say, at least think about it. Say, maybe this time I'll resist it. And sometimes, oftentimes, it's taking the unpopular position. You say, well, you know what, that's wrong. And I do that probably more than most folks, take the unpopular position, and it doesn't lead you to friendly responses a lot because, people sitting around, they think something's right, they think it's okay, and I turn around and say, well, no, that's wrong. And, that's stealing. And it's like, you just shatter their reality. I've told people that these handicap parking spaces are wrong. That's stealing people's property. And making the property owner paint the spots blue and all of this whatnot. And those parking spaces are owned by the state and the government and owned by the handicapped people. When in the process of that, that's all done on some guise of security for those handicapped, and so liberty is lost. But when you find out, you look, you see who actually gets into these parking spots. Guys that are, healthier than you and me, they found a way to go down, scam the system, and that's the way it works all the time. But it's a violation of somebody's property.
That's right.
For the benefit of somebody else, and that's the practice that we've got to start saying no to. And I know it's not all that easy. I got some relatives that live off the state, and they're wondering why I'm not very friendly with them. And I haven't confronted them to the point where saying, you know what, I'll never like you as long as you're a sponge off the system. And so, relative or not, I don't care. That's wrong. And so, we used to let people know that welfare was wrong. Now it's considered, an entitlement, and poor you're unfortunate you're in that situation.
You're unable to take care of yourself, so let's make everybody else take care of you.
Yes, make everybody else a slave for you to be a dependent.
There you go, the dependency. Well, Mike, the hour is up, man.
All right, well, I think more than an hour, but I think good show, really good show.
Sounds good. And make sure you tune in next Tuesday, 7 o'clock, here at Tyranny Busters.
Tyranny Busters. Tyranny Busters. Tyranny Busters. Tyranny Busters. Tyranny Busters.